Good morning. My name's Paul, and I'm a middle school teacher in Colorado Springs. So I took the institute in 2015 in Wyoming. I probably echo the same things Michael said. That really great presentation. I don't think anybody here would say otherwise, right? One of the problems is I think this is just kind of my thinking behind this is that. And I bet a lot of people had that same feeling that any conference you go to, you see, you can kind of look around and you go, there's going to be a spectrum of people who want to get it done and want to, like, do like Michael did, to people that are just maybe taking it to, maybe they were in over their heads or took it for the wrong reason or whatever. But I think any conference is like that. I definitely wanted to be on that. I'm still aiming to be on that side of the spectrum where I'm, building. I mean, some of the stuff that there, I guess we're going to get to, is kind of where I'm going. And certainly kids want that same thing too. Middle school kids do. What I kind of ran into was the reality of getting back home and going, I don't know where and when I'm going to do this. So what I have in our school is I teach math, and then we have an intervention period. And one of my biggest problems with that philosophy is that not every kid needs intervention, and really they need enrichment. So trying to get convinced in my school that it's okay to do this with kids and not redo math with them was that was probably my biggest challenge. And then time really became a big issue for me. So I wanted, really my goal for this year is to do exactly what, where Michael's going with making the electrics, but I needed a bridge, and my bridge became cigar box guitars. So real quickly, I wanted to make this something where if somebody wants to come up here and play what I've got, because I'm not much of a guitar player, okay? So everything I do here is going to be a little bit probably embarrassing to some of you. So is anybody a player?
Yeah.
I heard Doug is. Yeah. So I don't want to sit here and say like, boy, I know exactly what I'm doing. Everything has been really, really trial by fire for me. So if anybody's interested in playing and seeing how these work or if these work, I'd certainly love for you to do so. The only one that may not work too well is the ukulele. I had a couple of kids that wanted to build a ukulele, so I brought one of those along. But that was just kind of my basic, kind of the journey I'm heading in, is I want to be able to show this off to, or actually not show this off, but to get to that point where I feel like I'm doing what the institute was doing. I did get a grant. I was kind of fortunate to get that, but time-wise, it just didn't work out for me. By the time I could get the grant, it took a while buying supplies. It was like February of last year. I'm going, what am I going to do now? So that's with that 4 months left. That kind of was my impetus to get going on something. So what I did was I played around with in my garage. Right? No, I should say. Let me back up real quick. I was in over the winter break last year. I was in Phoenix, and there's this place called the Musical Instrument Museum. Has anybody ever been there? If you do, it's really one of the top 5 museums I've ever been to. And one of the presentations, or one of the displays in there, was about a place in Central America. Sorry, Christina corrected, was South America. There, and I cannot remember which country this is in, but very, very poor. And the teacher takes kids to a garbage dump, like whatever you think a garbage dump looks like, and they pick through it and they make instruments and make a symphony. So it's a recycled instrument symphony. I thought, if they're doing this in a third world country, I could at least try something here. That's kind of where I was at. So sat down and I made the cigar box guitar in my, and by the way, if you have middle school kids or high school kids and you know kind of the culture of that, you probably know what might be the main obstacle I had to doing this was that there's, despite the fact there was obviously no cigars in here, one of the headaches was getting people to say, and I'll talk about that in a second, but to say I can't have my kids playing around with cigar box guitars. So, so here I'll just really quickly show you what this thing can do. And if anybody wants to play around with this, please, 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 I'm not going to go anywhere with this. I brought this if people want to mess around with it. So I put the bottom 3 strings in this one, and then this is not going to be pretty, okay? If anybody wants to take over with me. So this was my very first thing I tried to play in this. That was Johnny. I'm not playing. I do apologize for my bad playing. That was the first thing I played. Yeah. So anyway, here's the biggest. And I didn't even think about this as I was making this. Was the whole fret thing was incredibly interesting to me, and this really led into my discussions with kids. Was I drew the frets on here, as you can probably see, and then. I didn't realize how much, because I don't play very much, how much you rely on the frets just to bend over those. So that really led to the whole, I was pressing so hard and I was like, oh my God, this is killing me. But what I wound up doing was some alternate tunings with this. And this was, I'm a pretty, like a lot of you, busy with family and all that stuff. And I kind of stopped at that point, want to come up with an alternate 3-string tuning that kind of goes like, EDE, I think, something like that. I know what I'm talking about with 3-string guitar. But you can play, if you retune it, basically you can get a full, if I go like EDE, I can get an E, I think maybe a G chord or something like that, if you just strum all the way through it, okay? And if the 6-string alternate, or the 6-string equivalent to that is, I think, what Keith Richards plays, which is like the open G. Does that sound right to people? Okay, so, so here's what I kind of ran into, was as I was building these, was first of all the cigar box thing. I had some kids who were like, no way, no way, I've got a 13-year-old and you're going to have them do cigar boxes. So that was one big thing. Materials obviously were a really big issue, just as far as Michael was kind of saying. It came up with, at the time, I couldn't ask people for money, so I had to get a little bit of money from my school, basically enough to buy some oak. So I used hickory on this one that I did. This is oak, and I had a really artistic girl that wanted to play around with this, but this is oak right here, so the oak actually goes all the way through it, and then this is the tough part, is how do you make the box? And so I wound up using MDF. Okay, for that fiberboard that was super cheap, and you can really, as long as you don't get wet. I told the kids not to take this in the bathtub or anything, but you can't get wet. But it's pretty moldable. It's kind of cool stuff, and some of our kids did some. This guy did some really cool stuff right here. All right. But keep in mind, everything I'm doing here is I'm thinking about how can I get to the year that I can build electrics. Okay, because I did order some supplies for it from the Guitar Building Institute. That's where I'm definitely headed. It's just I needed that bridge and I didn't want to do nothing. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that's kind of where I was heading. What this created for me is a situation where I can say, like, what if, I've got a class of 25 kids or 22 kids or whatever it is. What if I only get kids that order, or I only get 10 kids that order guitars, or 15 or 8? What do? You can't just tell these kids sit around. And so I wanted to have, I think this has created something where I can go a little further with this. As I was telling Christina earlier, I think there's ways, in fact, a couple of books that I use to use as my Bibles for this. There's ways you can basically, take these cigar boxes and plug them in. And that's kind of that's one thing I want to do kind of personally. So here's what I have discovered this doesn't do. It doesn't build electric guitars. I mean, it doesn't do what the Institute says. I'm fully acknowledging that. What it doesn't really make a real guitar, as kids would say, some of my kids would say. It doesn't really do a lot of the, some of the computer-aided stuff. You're not doing the dipping and stuff. And then it didn't really, for me, it didn't really get where I want to be, which is following the model. Okay, and that's where I'm hoping for this year. What it does is it allows for kids to be creative. There's some real components of the guitar. You have to use the tuners, you have to use the fret spacing and things like that. We found out a lot about that. And for me, it really just kept me in the game. Kind of keeps me feeling like I'm heading toward where I want to go. There's a lot of guitar components. Kids were really fascinated by, like, why can't I make it look like this? Because they were thinking, this is kind of acoustic. Why can't I make it look like this? Why can't I make it look like Eddie Van Halen's guitar? But it does use some of the components of guitar, and for me, it just gets me closer to where I want to be. Thank you. So here is I wanted to show you the ukulele real quick. So I had a couple kids that wanted to build a ukulele. So we found out a little bit about how ukuleles work, and it sort of works. No, I was working. I got it out of tune when I was sitting back there. So this one is not a good example. I would not play around with ukulele.
Speak well of your instruments.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, that one I broke the string last night, and we fixed it back there, but I broke the bottom string. But this one, and this is the one I was hoping that people want to come up and play a little bit, would be either one of these, but I got this tuned to open G, so what it makes is a... So it's not bad, it's not going to fill an auditorium or anything like that, but again, I was looking for a way to bridge the gap. So if anybody wants to play with this, that's the best I could play. I apologize for that. Is anybody in tune enough to want to give this a go?
What is part of your 15-minute time slot?
I'm totally fine with that. I mean, I was hoping somebody could sound better than me. Want to give it a try? It should be in tune.
I'll play for a second. No pressure, man.
You want a harder question?
Oh, there are no frets, they're just drawn on.
Right. Now, keep in mind, that was a student's, thank you, Doug, for that. So Doug actually showed it can work, which is kind of nice. But that's one of my students' guitars. What Doug, you probably noticed, is that it doesn't fan out there at the bottom, right? So that was one of our really big issues is, like, if I'm going to cut, I had to make a bunch of straight oak cuts, and the kids did all the routing and stuff, but I had to make a bunch of straight oak cuts. You really need it to fan up. This is the correct width up here, but it's at the nut, but it's at the bridge, it's not. It's supposed to fan out, something I didn't.
You know, one other thing I'd throw out at you too is a lot of the cigar box guitars are just 3 strings, and you can get away with making the neck narrower.
I see what you're
You
saying.
don't have to put 3 strings on it, and now if you're buying a set of tuners, now one set of tuners does 2 instruments. You know,
Oh, yeah, I got you.
economize that way. Now you're buying a third, you're buying half the strings too. So,
Good point.
you know, and then the narrower neck, it doesn't have as much tension on it.
Yeah.
You know, that's another way to go with it too.
Thank you. The thing, and I'm done, right? The thing that was kind of interesting was with this is kids wound up looking at you know, kind of doing the history of these string instruments. Like, the way I understand it, I guess they were telling me that Hendrix built his own first guitar. There's things called diddly bows, or 1 strings that are kind of interesting. Then we wound up looking at a couple of videos. Has anybody ever seen C6 Steve? Okay, you got to watch this on YouTube. His name is C6 Steve. He plays in Europe. He's an American that plays in Europe, and he plays on all these. He has a diddly bow. He has 3-string cigar box guitars, and he plays in large venues, and just total fun to watch.
C6?
C6, like look, Steve.
There's a video, there's a documentary called "It Might Get Loud."
Yeah.
And the first couple minutes has got Jack White, and he just goes through and he just cranks a string across a 2x4. There's a Telecaster pickup on it.
Wow.
And plugs it right into an amplifier, and I think he's got either a glass bottleneck or a socket.
Yes, a socket. I've got the video. We'll show the video.
There's,
Okay.
there's a guy in Nashville that plays in Printer's Alley, Stacy Mitchhart, and he will do probably a third of his blues show with cigar box guitars.
Wow.
Yeah, Eric Clapton played him in concert.
Really? Okay.
Well, you see the shovel guy, the guy with the shovel? Crazy.
Oh, hey, I didn't show you here real quick. I'll give my if you
I like that.
real quick. These are my and I'll leave these up here. But these are this one right here is my main resource. If you want to look through these at some point, I think this one's got one where somebody built a guitar out of a toilet seat.
Yeah, that's the one.
And can I say this on video? I believe it's called the shitar. Anyway, let's take a look through those. It's kind of cool.
What's the name of the guy up by Fayetteville? I think he may be dead by now. He built some he's an old timer. I can't think of the name from my life of me. But I'll look it up because you'll love it. He's just a totally homeschool guy that makes the weirdest guitar. I'll look him up and find him for you.
Thank you, Paul, for that.
Thank you.